Hello, I'm David Rothenberg, hosting this podcast, the Reentry Reality Check of the Fortune Society, a nonprofit organization which advocates for the formerly incarcerated and for men and women still in prison. We also provide multiple services for the thousands who walk through our doors each year. Thank you for joining us.
Hold my head high as I travel along this road. Help me always to.
Thanks very much for joining us today. I'm David Rothenberg, and we'll be talking about that perilous topic of reentry and recontacting the family. For men and women coming out of prison, it's a very complicated issue, and it varies from person to person, clearly. Our guests are Barbara Allen, the founder of Prison Families Anonymous, and Ervin Easy Hunt, a man who has not only come out of prison to a family, he was the son of a man who was incarcerated and the father, as he often says, the untold American story, 3 generations of men in prison. And reentry with the family, clearly from every perspective, is part of Easy's experience. Let's start with Barbara. You started Prison Families Anonymous years ago. You were not acquainted with the criminal justice system at all. Your husband went to prison, and you had to navigate life out here with 2 children. But before reentry, before your husband came out, there was the whole process of him being away, and how visiting hours is really the starting point of family continuity, is it not?
Yes, it is. And first of all, I'd like to say that the family is the collateral damage of the criminal justice system. And we are very often shunned, and people hold us responsible for whatever our loved ones did. And that's why when I started this program, I called it Prison Families Anonymous, because we promised our families anonymity. There's so much of harm, bad feelings towards the person who's left out here to suffer the consequences of someone else's actions. So, my husband went away when my children were 1.5 and 2.5. They went to the Nassau County Jail out here in Long Island, New York, and there was no visiting allowed for anyone under 16 years old. My children didn't know what happened to their father. He just disappeared on them. So, and my husband, who was sitting in the cell, had no contact with the children. What I used to do at visiting time, I would take my children in a stroller and walk up and down, in Long Island it's called Carmen Street, that's where the jail is located, and he would get permission, if he was lucky, to look down out and see the children in their stroller. They had a double stroller. And I was left, I had no idea what to do, what's going to happen to me and my children. It was like I was stunned. I was a first grade school teacher and never, ever knew anyone who was incarcerated, though I will say I once, as a student at Hofstra University, went to Rikers Island, and I saw people locked up in cells, and even then, with no contact, no knowledge, I said, oh my God, how can they do that to people in this day and age? And then it happened to my husband. So it was a very, very traumatic time of my life. And I know now, and I say it as I run many support group meetings, my program is not anonymous anymore. It's Prison Families Alliance, and we're an international support group, virtual. And I tell our families, re-entry has to start at the day of arrest. And the families have to understand that, too. The system, well, we have little control, although we try. But it has to start the day of arrest. You have to be prepared and prepare your loved one who is incarcerated for his coming home.
When your husband went to prison from the county jail, what was your experience visiting?
Well, my husband went to what most of people around the world know as Sing Sing. It's a New York State prison, not too far from New York City, where most of the crimes are committed, and most people who are incarcerated are sent there. But there, they were allowed visiting. My children were allowed visiting, and actually contact visits where they could touch him and hug him, and he could sit on their lap. And so we were very, very grateful that now we can have some kind of physical contact. That Sing Sing at the time was reception. Everybody who was going into the system wound up at Sing Sing, and then from there they were processed and sent wherever. So it was a great experience because we could see him and talk to him and touch him, and my children knew, oh God, my father's alive. And he spent a couple of months there. They were good months. I mean, they were bad months, of course, but in the scheme of things, in the whole picture, just the fact that we could have a contact visit was very important to the children, particularly. And I remember my daughter made a what you put on a paperweight rock in school for Father's Day, and she wanted to bring it to her father. You know, it was all decorated and designed and painted. She wanted to bring it to her father. And you know what? They didn't allow heavy rocks into the visiting area of the New York State prison. So she was quite upset about that. She did not understand why she can't give her father his Father's Day gift. You know, little things that people don't think about. And he went to Sing Sing for, as I said, a couple of months, and we were able to see him. It's a terrible place to visit, by the way. They have a long hill you have to climb up, and you bring packages. That's another topic of conversation, the packages. But from Sing Sing, he was transferred to Greenhaven. I went up to visit him with my children at Sing Sing. I got there, and they said, oh, he's no longer here. Now, I drove up with another family. That's another thing, the aloneness and the loneliness. That's something that you just don't understand unless you've lived it. But I did go up with another family, and my husband wasn't there anymore. He was at Greenhaven Prison, which is not far from Sing Sing.
They had not notified the family?
No, they don't notify the family.
On the transfer?
Heavens, no. As a matter of fact, they don't notify the family about everything. One thing I advise our families for, and I don't want to get on another track, but it's important, I tell them to make sure you have him sign a HIPAA form, as you get to the doctor. First thing we tell our families, so at least if you call the institution and he's in some kind of medical crisis, they can give you information. Not that they want to, but they can. Please excuse my cynicism. But he went to Greenhaven. How am I going to get there? The person who drove me is staying in Sing Sing for her visit. I'm stuck there with my 2 kids, no car. I had to call my father, who lived, it was many miles on Long Island. It was still in New York State, but it was a trip. My father had to come and get me and the children to bring us back home. No, they don't notify you. The family, as far as, and please, this is a personal comment, we're a pain in the neck to the criminal justice system. They put those walls up, those high walls, to keep us out as well as to keep them inside.
Right.
And they will do the least that they possibly can to make it easy for us to come for a visit. Jean was sent to Greenhaven. There, the visiting was a screen where you could put your fingertips through the screen for contact. You were allowed a quick hug on the way in. Then there was a barbed wire from the ceiling to the table. As I said, the only contact, fingertip contact. And it was looking at your loved one in a cage in a zoo. I decided at that point I would no longer bring my children to visit their father. They were not going to see their father in a zoo. So that began our time where I went up to visit him alone. And so many little distractions, stupid things. My mother and father would drive me up. My mother was not allowed to visit him because he was a mother-in-law. At that time, mother-in-laws were not allowed to visit. And there must have been somebody who didn't get along with his mother-in-law to put that into effect. Of course, I started writing letters and, complaining about it. But the families really, we are the collateral damage. We are shunned, we are shunned, we are scorned, and we are held responsible. And then our loved one is coming home.
Well, before we come to him coming home, we'll get back to you on that. Let's ask Ervin, and I don't know which facet you want to deal with first. The son of someone in prison, a man who went to prison and came home to your family, or the father of a boy. Let's maybe do it chronologically as the son of a man in prison. His coming home, was that a factor that impacted on your life?
Okay. So I was 13. Well, he and my mother were separated, right? So as a youngster going into teenage years, and
had you visited him in prison?
Never visited him in prison. Prison was the furthest thing away from my mind. Seeing somebody in, going, none of that. So I want to fast forward to the year he was coming home in 1972. Yeah. I was apprehensive. 1972, I was 17 years old, 18 years old. And no father structure in my life from 13 to 18. So I felt like, he was my father and I missed him, but I didn't want to see him anymore because I had already told everybody my father's dead because he was dead to me. And so, when he came home, the first thing he said to me, I'm here to bust you. I'm here, He was here to follow my tracks and see where I went and who I was with. And I was so rebellious against him in that aspect. And so my mother, his first few days, she let him stay in the apartment that we all shared. And then he had to find himself somewhere else. So as he found somewhere else, he still wanted me to come visit him wherever he was. Because when he and my mother separated, I used to go visit him on Fridays and come back Sundays. And I didn't want any more part of that. I was very angry at him for doing what he did to go to jail. With him, he went to jail because of the son of the woman he was seeing, and I didn't like her family to begin with. So, I told him, I said, listen, man, that's your family.
So I'm wondering, as you're telling this, how many stories how many men and women coming home have told me that they had an estranged relationship. Therefore, the coming home, it was emotional, but it didn't redirect your life. And I'm just wondering, Barbara, we'll get back to you easier with your other facets, but what were your children's response? Jean came home, your husband came home after 6 or 7 years, and how many years was it?
He only did 2. The first time he was a frequent flyer, but that's another story.
But so when he came home, the kids had aged, and did they know who he was, and did they want to?
He came home and he decided to redirect our lives. My kids.
Be the father.
Yeah, my kids and I were very, very casual. They were young. I was teaching, working, and so we would have TV dinners for for supper, whenever we eat in front of the television, and I'd be marking papers. And now he wanted to come home, and we have to all sit around the dining room table and eat. And the kids kind of looked at him. But it was.
Didn't they want a father though?
They were so young when he went away. They didn't know what it was like really to have a father. Yeah. They were babies, and they had my father. I do want to say
Grandpa.
I was grandpa.
So, but that's very close to what Easy was saying, that your kid's reaction was very similar to yours when your dad came home. Mm-hmm. That it was. It's not alienation. It's stuff that you all describe what it is. Was he a factor in your life? Certainly an emotional one.
Okay, so first of all, my mother had a relationship with another man, and she had to tell him to don't come around for a while my father was still in the house, and so he stayed away. My father wound up leaving, and I had to let the man who my mother was saying, I had to let him understand, you're not my father. My father's home now. So it was the battle going on in my head. Who do I listen to? Who do I respect? Because my father, like I said, when I was young, it was fear more than it was respect.
What's interesting about this? I've seen a few movies and a few stories, and it's about people coming home and there's a party and the family, and it's nothing like you're describing. It's not this easy flow of he's away, he's coming home, we're going to greet him. It's very complicated because the relationships were not really solid to begin with.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so Easy, you as a teenager then get arrested, and you were a young father. When you came out, what was your interaction with the children that you would have? What ages were they, and how did you respond to them, or were you a part of their lives as a father?
No. So my son's mother, she was 13 years old, 14 when she got pregnant, and I was 15 when she had him. So I was really never in his life, and being the youngest son at home, spoiled, got what I wanted. And I didn't want to share any of that with anybody. So I'll never forget the day he was about 6 years old. And he came up to me, because I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. And he came up to me and said, "Are you my daddy?" And I told him no. His mother was there, and I told him no. So I can imagine the impact that had on him as opposed to my mother with the boyfriend trying to be my father and then my father coming home.
But when you came home, you were still young that first time.
Yes.
What was your relationship with your mother? Was the family strength for you? Was she not?
Yes.
She was the continuing factor. Your father wasn't, your mother was.
Right.
So when you came home, how did she receive you, and how did you live with her? Was it complicated?
Yes, yeah. No matter when I came home after the prison experience, my mother, I went to her, and she housed me and fed me and clothed me.
And enabled you.
And enabled me. Yeah.
Was it difficult, or she was your strength, or was she?
Yeah, because
were there
after
fights?
a while,
Were there disagreements?
I came to expect that from her, and she let me have that expectation.
I'm wondering if your experience is typical. I mean, you've met many men.
Yeah.
You've done time with enough men, and they talk about families. Is that dream American family is prominent, or is it more like
that's what
more your story?
That's what I believed. I believe that the way I was with my mother, that most men were like that with their mother.
The incarcerated men.
Incarcerated
The
men,
family structure was
Yes.
broken.
Yes.
But Barbara, yours was more the American hallmark picture.
Yeah.
The daddy and mommy and the two children, and it still didn't work, did it?
No, and an extended family. I mean, my parents were very, very involved with us lovingly. I mean, and I work with many families
I
through.
want to talk about you.
Okay.
When Jean came home, when your husband came home,
Yes. We all accepted him, wanted him home, loved him. When he was away, we visited every chance we could. I used up almost all my sick days from work visiting him, advocating, being a prison wife. And
you said that when he came home, he wanted to be
yeah,
the father or
Yeah.
the structure of the house.
yes.
How did you all deal with that?
With a little resentment. I'm a kind of a strong woman, and I said, you can't just come home and take over. That's, we have to do it gradually. I was responsible for all the bills, and I was responsible for everything. We had bought a home about 6 months before he went to prison. That was another thing. Here I was left with the responsibility of caring for a house, paying the mortgage, and I did resent him. A little bit.
While he was away and you were visiting, knowing he was coming home, back in those days, and I would say it's probably true around the country, mostly still, was there any place you could go for guidelines on coming home?
Oh my goodness, no. Oh my goodness. That's why I started Prison Families Anonymous. I was ostracized. Well, I'm lucky. I had a principal who was very supportive, and when he was arrested, the principal came to my house and said, "Barbara, you come back to work as soon as you can," and neighbors who were really very supportive of me. But no one understood the journey of having a loved one incarcerated, except the other people in the visiting room. And that's how I started a support group, David, because I couldn't go through this by myself. For every single phase, there was no place, and even coming home. And when Gene came home, the Fortune Society was there for him. I mean, they opened their doors, and he could have immediately, but he had no interest in that.
The other families that you were meeting when you
Yeah.
started Prison Families Anonymous, were they structured, or did you find it? Was it mostly women, or were there fathers and uncles?
It was almost always women,
wives or mothers?
both. We had
fathers and sons and brothers.
Some fathers, yeah, there were some fathers, but it was mostly women.
And I asked that question because I know that every time I've gone to a prison, the visiting room is 90% women.
Try a women's prison. Go visit a women's prison, and you're lucky if you see two men. But no, we always had some fathers. Husbands, no, not too many husbands.
Husbands and women in jail.
Yeah.
Easy, when you were locked up, did your mother visit, or did anybody in your family visit?
In the beginning, when she was able to, as her health started to waver, I didn't see her as much. And she came to visit me on Rikers. She never came to visit me in state prison.
One of the most emotional scenes I've ever seen in a movie was Denzel Washington was playing Hurricane Carter.
Okay.
And he said to his wife when she came, or the woman, I don't know if they were married,
right.
Don't come to visit anymore.
Right.
Because when you leave, it's too painful, and he'd rather do without. Does that resonate with
Yes.
either of you at all?
Both sides.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that he had to go through a strip search and all the indignities when we left. But even the families, when we used to go to visit, I always carpooled. I mean, I'm an outgoing person. I met people in the visiting rooms, and I very seldom went up. I don't think I ever went up by myself. But the ride up, we're all excited, and we're laughing and saying, gee, we wonder what these people, if they only knew where we were going. But the ride home, you could hear a pin drop in the car. Yeah. It was so sad because you're watching someone you love and you know that they're going to be locked up and you're going to a life with your children. The drive home from the prisons were always...
But was the visit itself difficult? Because if you felt that way, did it come across to the man you're visiting?
No, because we were so happy to see him. And we kind of, you act as if, you know that you're leaving him there, but the time you're here, you want to get every bit of joy out of it that you can, and you want to leave him with good feelings, too. And that's why I said at the beginning, and I tell this to my families and our support groups, reentry has to start the day of arrest. Okay.
So when you had visits, were you depressed after your mother left, and did you had women in your life mothering children? Did any of them come and visit?
Not so much depressed, but saddened that she had to take as much time as she did to get to me. Especially because, like I said, never for the 45 minutes, and in my selfishness behind being locked up, I would ask her to bring this, bring that, bring the third, and she would tell me, yeah, I bought you this, I bought you that, you know. But then I couldn't tell her what I was doing there because, you know, there was nothing, quote, exciting for being locked up.
So what did you talk about when did she tell you what she was doing?
I would talk about what I just said. What did you bring me? What color this? What color that? Well, because I knew what I couldn't have, and she didn't. So a lot of times, you know, like I say, on Rikers, a lot of stuff got sent back. So I know she was, and I felt her pain. Like, you know, I came all this way to spend 45 minutes with you. And you can't even have half the stuff that I brought. And I know in her mind she was saying, well, I'm not bringing anything else. In fact, it got to a point that I knew she wasn't going to come back.
Were there phone calls?
Well, yeah. Of course,
what did you talk about on the phone?
What you doing? What are you cooking?
That's you asking her.
Yeah. What you doing? What did you do today? But I would always go back to, when are you coming back? And she would say, and if she gave me any kind of hesitation in her response, I would get sad. But it took me a while to understand this is too much for her.
And Barbara, did you have phone calls?
No, back then there were no phone calls. Because I'm up from the dark ages. No, there were no phone calls back then. The only thing we had were letters. We wrote to each other. I still have some of his letters from all that time back. But
were the letters censored?
Oh, yes. I used to sometimes write to him, especially in County Jail, Dear Jean, and to whom it may concern. Because I knew
neither of you have painted a picture that sounds like what we want for the family reunion. As I mentioned, I've seen a couple of documentaries where the family had the bunting and the cake ready, and the guy came home and was lost. What could be done in the system or are there any places that you know of in the system where the family members have an opportunity to relate to each other that permits some continuity when they came out, that give them a strength?
Well, in Barbara's case, you know, I'm not sure of that time period, you know, what years those were. But as the years went on, things became a little bit easier for you to communicate what you couldn't do, what you couldn't bring, you know, and so...
Well, yes, except Barbara, as she pointed out, is still working with families today, and they sound like emotionally they're going through the same journey, even though there was cosmetic changes, which I call Band-Aids on gangrene.
Jails are different too.
Yeah. Pardon me?
Jails are different too.
Yeah,
Yes, but the emotional resonance of the family seems to be still not
fear.
nurturing a healthy situation.
No, and it's not. Now, let me just say, in New York State, we have what they call the the Family Visitation Program, the FPR, whatever, where families are allowed to visit for a couple of days, nights, and it's not just for, as Kenny would say, to conjugate, but not just conjugal visits,
The trailers.
but the trailer visits. And a mother and children are allowed to go and visit. They've just taken that away from us in New York State because of the what we have gone through with the strike and everything. They haven't reinstated that. But that, we used to go. I was very much an activist back then with the Fortune Society, and we used to go to Albany and ask for people to be allowed furloughs to come back into the community rather than have a conjugal visit place, because everybody is coming home. Hopefully one day they are coming home. They're coming home to us as well as society. And we beg. So they never did the furloughs lasted for a short time, but this family visitation program is what they're using now. That helps. It helps a little bit. But it's not in a real life setting. You don't have the phone ringing and the kids wanting to.
You're talking with your organization, which is now part of a national group, and you have Zoom meetings with people. I sat in on one, and there was somebody from Alaska, New Mexico. So
Canada.
Are you finding from other states that there are places that are more forward-looking, or is it generally the repression seems to be national?
The repression is national. It is national. I got a phone call yesterday from a family. Her son is coming home. She's in a panic. He's in Pennsylvania. She happens to coincidentally live in New York. But he's in a panic. Where is he going to go? And, I cannot tell you how many people beg me, Barbara, you're familiar with the Fortune Society. Can my son or my husband please go there? I have a family in Long Island now. Her son is coming home, and he cannot live with her husband, which is the stepfather of the person who's incarcerated, has a gun collection.
Wow.
She's scared to death. He's been away now, he'll be 18 years when he comes home. And, where can he go? It's panic. And even when they are going home to their loved ones, it's a fear. Has he changed? We worry about the things that our loved ones have seen while they were incarcerated. Mm-hmm. And I used to ask Gene almost every visit, did anybody rape you? Because I was scared of all of that, and he's coming home to me.
You went in and out, easy. You went in and out a lot.
Yeah, I went in at 18.
Did you ever come out to a solid situation that was nurturing? Was your mother, and it was always your mother, you said.
Right.
Was she prepared for who you were and what you had gone through?
Like
she tried.
Yeah, and she did. My mother, she kept a job up until she retired from social services. And every time I would come home, her first question to me was, what's going to be different now? And I had gotten involved with drugs, my in and out. And
was she a stranger to that world? Did she have any understanding of it?
Like I said, I was rebellious because she had the boyfriend, again, who wasn't my father, trying to tell me what to do and how to act. And when I could come home and I'm like, you're not my father. That was always my thing. You're not my father.
No, but was there anything? What I'm trying to find out, were there any places where a woman like your mother could go to get some insight about how to deal with son coming home?
There probably was, but she just didn't want to do it. She didn't want to go and discuss her problems with anybody else.
Embarrassment.
Total embarrassment.
Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I still do have a sibling.
Were they involved in your life at all?
My sister told me, let me tell you what she told me. One time I sent her a drawing from prison. And she sent me a letter back saying, I don't want my name on nothing coming from or going to prison. You come home, you can bring me everything you want, but don't you dare send me another letter.
That's right. The stigma.
And what did that do? Did that you feel alienated from
Yes,
that?
yes, I was.
So you did not?
I was hurt. But I had to, because growing up, my sister, she was the caregiver most of the time when my mother wasn't around, and I knew she was serious about not doing it.
Did she have her own family by then?
Yes, yeah. She had a. Each time I went to prison, she had a daughter. That was 2 at the time. I was in prison, and then 7 years later, she had a son.
At any time, and you, as you said, you were in and out, but any time, Easy, was there a group in prison, staff or other men that are incarcerated, that talked about how to come out? What's the passage?
Listen, the guys in prison who were doing that, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear from them.
But there were men there.
Oh, sure, there were men there. There were men there that insisted on doing that with their families. I was like, no, because my mindset was, I can't wait to get the hell out of here and do some drugs. I don't care about my family that much more, other than what they can send, what they're going to send, or are they coming to see me? And if they're not doing that, then I don't want to be bothered.
What broke the cycle for you? Because obviously there was a point when you've been home for years now.
Yeah.
So what worked? Was it family? Or was it just growing older?
I'm going to tell you the honest God truth. It was Fortune Society.
What happened?
I believed that they cared about me, and they showed me that you have the wrong mindset. You have to change your thinking. You have to become not jail mentality anymore, because there's more to you than that. So many people came and showed me, you're not locked up, and you're not a bad person. What can we do to help you change your mind?
Would you have been receptive when you were younger, do you think?
I don't think so.
That's hypothetical, so
I don't
it's really
think so.
not a fair question.
No. I was my mind was so buried on, like, damn it, my father went to prison, and he came home and tried to change me. Y'all are so busy trying to change me, y'all don't know what is deep inside my heart. And it was the hurt and
the drugs
projected, and the drug said, listen, you don't need none of that.
So when your son went to prison, did he ever come out to you?
No.
When he came home?
No. And in fact, I didn't even know he was in prison until he came home. It was so funny. Like I said, my memory of him was when he was 6, and he asked me, "Are you my daddy?" And I told him no. The next time I saw him, he was 18 years old. He had a grandmother, and because his mother was doing drugs and carrying on anyway. But he had a grandmother who really, really, really cared about him, and she instilled in him, you should talk to your father. And his thing to me was, you didn't want to talk to me before. Why you want to talk to me now? And it's still kind of like that.
One of the things listening to your story, and to some degree yours, Barbara, is that most of the framework for change and understanding is from people who have not lived lives like this at all.
Yeah, you can't tell them about it.
They know the American family that we've seen in Hallmark, and that's a different kind of animal.
Yes.
And so that they're devising plans and procedure that has nothing to do with you, the son of a man who was in prison, the father of a man who was in prison, and you being in prison. It's a very different
It's a very different animal. Trust me, it's a different animal altogether.
Well, I was going to say different human being. They were treating you like an animal. That you're a human being, and that seems to be complicated. But Barbara's family was traditionally structured but it still didn't work because the structure was fractured by his incarceration, and therefore the traditional plan didn't seem to be working.
Because there is no plan when they're incarcerated. There's no plan.
But could there be one?
Of course. Oh, I have it all figured out. I mean,
Tell us.
I
believe
I have it all figured out. I just went through
Tell
this.
us.
I believe in community-based institutions. You don't send people far away from their family and their loved ones. You have, and I know it's expensive, but boy, it's a lot less expensive than recidivism. Each community should have facilities that are nearby, open facilities that the families could come and have a group like Prison Families Alliance there. We did work with people on reentry in our group, of course. And when the men came home, we met with the men and their wives, and because a man could say to somebody else what he would not say, and
that affects some people, Barbara. But you said people shouldn't be far away from their families.
That's
but many
right.
of the men are not part of a family that would make any difference. It would make any difference.
Well, that of course, then we go back to the schools and the whole social structure.
That's part of it.
But we are. You grow where you're planted.
Yeah.
This is where we are.
But for prison family, for Easy's family, perhaps his mother could have benefited from it if she knew if she thought in terms of how to reach somebody. But for the most part, your family was not in tune to your incarceration. They were struggling on their own.
And the dissection of the family, like my sister would say, I don't want nothing going to or coming from prison. And if I told her that there's a prison family that you can talk to and deal with me, she's like, no, I don't want to deal with you like that.
Well, you can't reach everybody, but we do have a Prison Families Alliance. We have a siblings group.
Sure, yeah.
Because we know that each family member deals with things differently, and it's you change. It's a journey. It's a long journey.
Does your group go into prisons at all?
No, we love to. Well, we are in a couple of states. Yes. Well, we're in. We have people who go into who work in the prisons who came to us and want.
But then, how do you deal with somebody like Ervin Hunt, Easy, for whom the family is not the determining factor, which is at least half of the people that are incarcerated who would not come to Prison Families Anonymous because it's not the family that's needing that's I don't even know what I want to say there. The family is not part of their journey.
Yeah,
Wow.
but you see,
And you said we have to go back to social.
well,
The whole social fabric
of course,
of our society.
the people who come to us are involved with their families. That's
Yes,
why they come
and
to
that
us.
to be dealt with, and that's real and that's serious.
That's right.
But it's not the whole picture.
No, of course not.
But you can only deal with what you can deal with.
That's right. I mean, it's you could take each little compartment of what's going on, and but I do think that even in Easy's case, if there were community-based institutions and the stigma was taken away. See, your sister feels stigmatized. She doesn't want. I mean, I could tell you story after story about families with the stigma, how moms lied to their children and told their children daddy's working upstate, and they
Please.
I mean,
We've heard that guy.
Yeah, of course.
Somebody thought their grandma thought he was working in a farm for 5 years.
Yeah, of course.
This has been very interesting because we really made a dichotomy that's to be instructive to people who are dealing with this problem. The part of the population that's incarcerated, Barbara has dramatically explained, are those who have family members that are ready to be a part of their lives and need help from the system. Easy is part of a family, part of a structure where the family is not incidental, has not been a positive factor. And it's so that the system can't have a single way of dealing with it
Right.
because there are so many variations.
So many.
And coming home has so many dynamics, which leaves, if I may say so, places like the Fortune Society, which is run by formerly incarcerated people who have those who can help through family services and those who can deal with those for whom family services is not the immediate need.
Right.
Does that, am I,
Yeah.
No,
we're getting close to something.
You're so right with that. But I remember, like, early in Fortune, in my years, there wasn't any of this. That we could send a parent or you could send somebody here to talk about and do what we're doing today.
That's because the people coming to us taught us what, or told us what the needs are.
Yeah.
One of the effective things about Fortune Society and programs like Fortune is that the programs created were a response to the needs as described by the people coming in.
Exactly. That's how we operate with Prison Families Alliance.
Yes.
That's why we have siblings groups. We have groups for families whose loved ones are sex offenders. I mean, that's a tough one. But whatever the families need,
a real
that's
one.
what we try to
Yes.
provide for them. And
So I was so glad to meet you, because, I told you before, you reminded me of what a father should do with a son. That's why I call you Dad to this day, because you showed me, listen, I don't know what he did or what he didn't do, but I'm going to love you until you learn to love yourself. You told me that, and I never forgot that. And that's why I call you Dad.
Maybe this is a point where we conclude this discussion so we don't start weeping in each other's arms.
I could go on and on and on.
Yes, really. Really.
But I want to thank you both, Barbara Allen, Prison Families Anonymous, Ervin Easy Hunt. An exciting and an important area, and I think that you've broken it down beautifully, that people hearing this, particularly people in the system or political people,
Yes.
and sociologists who do the diagrams on making this a better society, that you have given I think, a very clear picture
Yes.
on a very complicated issue.
Yeah.
So thank you, Barbara Allen and Ervin Easy Hunt.
Thank you,
Very
Dad.
welcome,
Thank you, Dad.
David.
You're very welcome.
Give me one more chance to try and make it right. Give me one more go. Let me see the light.
Thanks very much for joining this podcast. I'm your host, David Rothenberg. If you need more information or if you'd like more information about the Fortune Society, check out our website. It's quite simply fortunesociety.org. A lot of information on it, as well as all of our podcasts.
Give me one more poem. Let me speak straight from my heart. I wanna go home.